Hello everyone and welcome back to Imperator Rome. I'm Lord Forwind, this time with a guide on economy. So the easiest nation for people to learn how to use the economy is, surprisingly of all nations, Judea. It just happens to be one of the nations in the game that is less likely to be conquered or invaded early on. And, suffice to say, it has the ability, it has all the profits, and it can get a free investment from procking Moses all the time. So it tends to help you to build tall. So I don't necessarily recommend this for a game, but if you want to practice building an economy, this is a perfect place and a perfect country to start with. It's large enough, you've got a good variety of trade goods, and you have a half-decent population. So if you want to learn economy, play Judea. So first off, your economy is based off multiple things. We're going to go to the economy tab, and obviously you can see what it is. Putting your stuff down to maintenance helps. In fact, if you're going to start as a country like this and you don't have a standing army, turning your army maintenance down to 0 may actually give you a better economy. It's kind of funny. So obviously your income's divided into taxes, commerce, and tributes. I'm not going to be going into tributes because that's kind of self-explanatory. Taxes, it's pretty simple. Commerce, though, is where you're going to rake your real money. The way the Marius update restructured the economy, it made commerce the vast majority of your income. So we're going to work on that. Taxes is pretty basic. Certain pops contribute income. Freemen, tribesmen, and slaves. As you can see, slaves gives 0.1, freemen give 0.01 and 5 manpower, and a freeman gives 0.02 tax and base manpower. Citizens and nobles do not provide any economy in this sense. The nobles and citizens have to do with trade routes and stuff, but it's hard to explain without actually getting into nitty-gritty details. So suffice to say, they're good, but if you have a choice between any of these three, if you want tax, you go with slaves. If you want the second best tax, you go with freemen, and tribesmen are for everyone who's a tribal nation. I should point out this fact that Judea starts as a civilized nation, so this is a guide on civilized economy. So, trade routes. How do you get trade routes? Well, we're going to make this really simple. First off, you go to your trade overview. This gives you all your details. Feel free to read into and examine it. You want to click this up here, automatic trade acceptance. This prevents you to have to manually approve every single trade offer everyone sends you. You want to leave block surplus on so you don't trade away any capital bonus or surplus bonuses you may have. Next thing you want to go to is your nation overview, administration tab, provinces. This allows you to set up automatic trading in the provinces. While this is not a big issue for a country like Judea here, where you've only got 3 provinces, so you can manage the trade routes relatively easily. A nation like, the Seleucids or the Mora are going to have dozens of provinces, and trying to go through manually each one and going, okay, we're going to go here, we're going to import grain from here, just takes forever. You still may want to do manual trade in your capital, just so you get the biggest bonuses and stuff, and the most income, but your scattered provinces, you want to turn on automatic trading. So, how do we get more trade routes? We're going to go into this and then we'll divert into buildings and taxes. So the easiest way to get trade routes is, investing in them. Basically, you can turn political power, and once you get political power, the next level of this is, we'll speed through this. The next level is going to be 20 gold to do an investment, and then 40, and it goes up. It goes up rather quickly. It's why having free investments and putting them in your capital or wherever you're concentrating trade routes, the free investments you get from innovations, events, etc., are very valuable because they can save you gold in the long run. Okay, so commercial ventures has been done. We have successfully improved this. You'll see now our current investments here at an additional cost of 20 gold. Dun, da, da. So here's something you should know. While this is now costing 20 gold for me to invest here, in all categories, by the way, not just trade routes, a different territory, your base level territory, costs no gold. So if you've got excess political power, the one thing you should spend it on to improve your economy is go around and create new trade routes. It's very handy. Sticking one in every province and then put on automatic trading will generate you some, but not an immense amount of income. But once you've got, an empire the size of Egypt or the Seleucids, you're going to be making quite a bit of money. So why did I pick Judea for this one? Well, I mentioned that Moses here gives a free investment. This is very important because generating free investments, he gets it every 8 years. Free investments are considerably rare in the game, and the Judea gets them, or actually Samaria gets them as well, because they are of Jewish religion as well. Have the ability to use these profits and make money from them. How you set up your economy with profits and stuff matters quite a bit here. For example, David here gives citizen output and tax, but early on it may be worth taking this and flipping to Caleb here, because he gives you an additional 2.5 trade routes. So just like that, we're up to 5 or 5.5 trade routes. So whatever religion you play as, go through and check which ones may give you income and stuff. Usually, obviously, it's going to be on the economy one of your profits, but some of the other ones can be useful too. For example, Esther gives population conversion speed and happiness, but if you want to grow a tall country, going with Abraham, who gives you population growth, will help you more. And obviously, each of these have an activation benefit as well. So it's worth keeping an eye on that. If you're lucky enough to get one like the Jews or a deity that you've created, which you can create deities, or in this case, you can create prophets because you're Jewish. You can deify them and they get a bonus. The bonus can be very powerful. The economy one is usually get citizens or freemen in your city. It's a good way to grow your population if you're a small nation. More population, more money. So anyway, hopefully that's explained trade routes now. Obviously, it takes time for the game to process the trade routes. Certain goods are more valuable. You'll notice stuff like incense, precious metals, gemstones are very valuable. Precious metals, if you can get it, earns you money. So this is going to go up now if we go to the next month. There we go. Oh, yeah, well, that's just a random event. It doesn't matter. There we go. Already our commerce, which started the game very low, is almost equaling our tax income, and that's only going to get larger. Obviously, we have a cost here because we're paying tribute, but there's nothing we can do about that. So, in terms of taxing, okay, so we already said slaves give you tax, correct? Slaves gives you 0.1 base tax. Slavery is obviously the best way to gain taxes, but taxes are not going to give you the most amount of money in the long run, but they're a good way to start your economy and supplement it. I'm pretty sure you can do entire slave builds, but you're probably going to have a lot of unhappiness because slaves tend to be unhappy that they've been enslaved. They have a base negative 30. Nobles have base 20, and they're hard enough to keep happy. So how do you do that? Well, you have more slaves. And there are ways to get more slaves and more stuff. So if you go to the building, we'll do cities, then we'll do settlements. Cities are more complex. If you go to a city, there's only one building that really costs you gold. That's fortresses. Be aware that if you exceed the tactical fort infrastructure here, the cost for maintaining forts goes up considerably. And they do cost money to maintain in existence. This one's 0.6 to maintain these two forts. And if it goes over that, it could very quickly bankrupt you. So just be aware that that is one thing you want to deal with in economy. Surprisingly, your port, your aqueduct, your granary, your library, your trading camp do not contribute at all towards one economy or detract from it in any immense way. The ones that matter here are the marketplace, which gives local-based trade routes. Still not entirely sure how that's calculated. I'm pretty sure from what I've read and understand that there's a maximum every province can support of trade routes, and that boosts it. It doesn't give you trade routes, but allows you to develop your province to have more trade routes, if that makes some sense. I'm not entirely sure how effective it is right now. But for your economy, the marketplace, and the tax office. Tax office gives 0.10% tax. And that can be pretty useful. The problem is taxes, unless you have a mass amount of slaves, are not going to be a large portion of your income. Most of your income is going to come from trade. But still, building, 5 or so of these is going to boost your tax income in this province from 0.18 to 0.27. The rate of return isn't great, but if you got excess cash, it's good. Now, the tax office can be used to greater effect if you build mills. So a mill gives slave output plus 6%, increases slave happiness. If you're having issues with slaves, building mills help. But the key is the local slave desired ratio. So people are confused about this one, so I'll give you a rough rundown. If you go here, view pop info, bottom left, it will tell you what the optimal ratio for your populations is. So right now, there should be 19 nobles in Jerusalem. 19% of them. Right now there's only 5. This means that populations will be promoted until you get to 19% or thereabouts. I think it rounds down in most cases. So just be aware of that. Now here we've got 35% citizens, supposed to be 26. So these will probably either be promoted to nobles or demoted into freemen, who are supposed to have 35 over 20. They're supposed to have no tribesmen if you're not a tribal nation, so they will swiftly be moved into slaves or freemen. And in terms of slaves, you're supposed to have 19. Obviously, you can see the factors that add up to these. So like capital territory plus city gives 25 in Jerusalem. But then other factors come into play. And slaves, it's 10 and then 15. So you can change that. If you want more slaves or nobles or any of these, really, you have to build the proper building. And once you're civilized, you can't do tribesmen other than in tribal settlements, just letting you know. So the academy is for nobles, the court of law is for citizens, and the forum for freemen and the mill are the 2 we care about, though, because they affect your economy. So freemen give some tax income. It's very low. They provide more manpower, so I wouldn't rely on them as any source of wealth. But if you want more, you can build this building. It'll add 10% to the amount of freemen there. You could build a lot of freemen to provide manpower and a small tax. Or you could go and build lots of mills. You can build 3, so you can get plus 30 slaves in a province. And the increase in slaves has multiple benefits. First off, it's going to provide you the more base tax. Every population gives you some. The next key factor is your trade goods. And this is getting slightly more advanced, so we'll come back to this in a moment. But the other buildings here, the only one that affects your economy in any big fashion is foundry. Decrease the number of slaves needed for surplus. We'll talk about that. And does increase your population output by 10%. I'm not entirely clear if the foundry affects your money from trade. As far as I understand, it doesn't, but it can. So, time to talk about trade goods with a slight detour before that. On your diplomacy page, bottom right, there's a neutral stance. If you go into it, you can click down to the mercantile stance, which will give you 25% commerce income. Big deal. Commerce is obviously how you're going to make your most money. This will help you with that. So, trade goods. So, every province, by default, produces a trade good. You can see it right here. This produces a leather. This produces a cloth. If we zoom out, this is what the map looks like. Yeah, there's a lot of them ones. Certain goods are only produced in cities, which is important. As you can see, the honey right here is produced in cities. It's not produced in settlements. There are certain goods that are associated with cities. When you go to upgrade a city, it will replace whatever the existing trade good is with a more advanced one. I can't really show it to you here, but trust me, it does. Obviously, certain trade goods are worth more. If you want more money from exporting them, focus in that area. So if you're lucky enough to have a precious metal mine, like right up here in Macedon, it might be a good idea to get this is basically gold and silver. Concentrate slaves here. Why do you want to concentrate slaves there? Well, if we click in here on Jerusalem, it will tell us that Jerusalem is producing 2 honey. And it says down there, every 20 slave population will provide an additional 1 honey. If we look, we have 6 slaves. So if we got in 26 slaves, we'd produce 3 honey. That would give us 2 to export. Obviously, we put on the block trading surplus, so we will keep 1. But that's how you produce 2. Now, if you click on a normal province, here is a city that produces 2 woods. And if we click down here, this produces 1 wood. So how do you increase this? Obviously, you do slaves. The problem is that your settlements are never going to have a mass population compared to your cities. So the trade goods in your cities you're going to have more of. But there is a way to change that to some degree. So if we go to the building tab, by the way, get used to using the macro builder for economy. It saves you a lot of time. And you see all the different options for cities, obviously. I'll also show you strategic trade goods in case you need them to build stuff. But the key right here is settlement buildings. So there are roughly 4 that can affect your income offhand. The basic one is a tribal settlement. This is what you're going to use if your tribesman increases your tribe output, wants you to have more tribes, basically. Once you become civilized, you want to get rid of your tribal settlements and replace them with one of the other 3. And those 3 are slave estates, mines, and farming settlements. Yes, barracks does increase your freeman desired ratio, which does provide some income, but you're better off dealing with that in cities than taking over provinces. You're much better off getting a extra trade good from a province than a small base tax from having a large freeman population. Now, you can do a lot of weird things with this game, but I would not recommend building barracks everywhere unless you need tons of manpower, which on the Marius update, I haven't had issues with manpower really ever except for small nations. So the 3 ones you want to build. The first one to focus on is mines. Obviously, Jerusalem does not have any that I can build a mine in, unfortunately. But if I did, you probably want to build the mines first. Why do you want to build the mines first? Well, mines usually, if you're lucky enough to have an iron mine, it's a strategic good. Mines tend to be metals, and metals tend to be half-decently expensive trade goods. Also, it is possible to put other buildings in the settlements where you could build mines, but you can only build mines in certain settlements. So my rule of thumb is always build your mines first before you concentrate on any other settlement buildings. The next one is farming settlements. Again, farming settlements like mines can only be built certain areas. So if we look here, you'll see the results of building it is the slaves needed for a local surplus of -5 now goes down to -10, which means you need 5 less slaves. The food produced goes up, which can help you sustain large cities. The best is a large city in a province surrounded for the rest of the settlement, basically. The rest of the province, nothing but farming settlements. But you're not going to find anywhere of that, like outside of the Fertile Crescent in Egypt. But it will prevent you from needing to import as much food if you build it. Now, if we look into other results, add civilization value, it's good. The local civilization level, yes. The pop migration speed is more likely to migrate, but that's not a big issue. The big one is slaves needed for surplus. So if we were to build this province right here, which says it requires 15 slave pops to produce 1 livestock, we build that, it goes to 10. Now, obviously, we only have 1 there, but this is a very low population area. If you were to go to one of the higher population areas, say in Egypt, where it's not a city, you might start with 4. These numbers go up over time, 5. The Fertile Crescent's going to have a fair amount as well. This has 7. Obviously, the more you can reduce this, 13. If you reduce that by 5, then you only need 8. So you can see how that can be beneficial. But that's also why more population gives you more income, as you end up having more slaves to produce more trade goods. The final building option is slave estates. So mines are for metals. I think stone, maybe. No, I don't know about stone. Could be stone. Don't take my word for it. Farming settlements are for stuff like grains or other livestock or vegetables, stuff like that. Stuff that will provide you food that you can use to support your population. But the last set of trade goods are just kind of random ones. Stuff like cloth or leather, etc. For those, you want to build the slave estate. The slave estate has virtually the same output benefit as mines and farming settlements, with one big caveat: it increased local slave output by 30%, which can add a large deal to a settlement with plenty of population. But as you'll see, the results, our total income doesn't increase much at all, mainly because we have so few population, and tax right now is not worth a lot. If tax gets increased, this would be a much more viable strategy. It used to be. Suffice to say, right now, building buildings doesn't help you with your income that much, which is weird. You're better off investing in trade routes. But if you do have excess money, build mines, then farming settlements, and then everywhere else. You notice you can build this almost everywhere except for cities. Put it everywhere else, and you'll see the benefit. It won't be huge, but once you've conquered all of Gaul and turned it all into slave estates as Rome, you'll make a lot more money than you would for improving a single province in Judea. There are plenty of inventions that affect your income. They're mostly located under the Civics tab. You've got two different routes. You can do the right to be heard route, which tends to increase output, which can be useful if you've got a good sized population. Specifically stuff like slaves needed for surplus, -1. That's pretty useful. Other stuff like building cost, road cost. Here's a neat one. Rural planning allows you to build one extra settlement building. So rather than just a single slave settlement, you could build two, which would reduce the population needed for a surplus by 10, which would make it much more likely for you to get trade goods. I haven't done any in-depth research about the difference between urban planning and rural planning, but offhand, if you wanted to make money, rural planning is probably worth more. But urban planning, you could get trade, research, and population more out of your cities than rural. But something to consider. But over here, the standard measures tree, I'm going to call it, under the civics, is the one you want to look at. So standard measures basically has stuff to do with your income and population. Stuff like 5% import value. This is very good if you're doing a lot of importing. Importing +1 capital routes, monthly wages down, population happiness, more trade routes. There's a lot that provide trade routes. Basically, you can get like 10 trade routes just from researching stuff. I will point out this one right here deserves a mention, even though it's not a video about it. This one adds the threshold for civil wars +5%, which is good. It also decreases the monthly wages of characters. All very good. Obviously, the left is more trade and building. The right is more taxing. So you can get more tax. But as I've said, tax right now doesn't provide an immense amount of money. It provides some, and it obviously grows. But trade is the real way to be profitable. And certain of them are more valuable than others. Other ones are less, like build cost. Unless you're struggling with money, you kind of want to focus on the stuff that gets you more trade routes and cheaper trade route incomes. The rest of the stuff, the other, the branches and trees, they don't have too much. If you want to do tribute stuff, the oratory stuff gives you bonuses to, managing your subjects, which can give you tribute income. A special mention to go to yearly installments, which reduces your tribute income, but basically makes it so your subjects will never revolt. Don't take this if you want a tributary economy. Under the military tree, you get stuff like retirement opportunities, legion maintenance -5%. Stuff like that is pretty useful. Standard provisioning over here gives -10% fort maintenance. That's good. Paymasters, another 5% legions. There's a couple of these ones you want to look through. There's probably some in here in the naval tree. I don't use naval tree that much, but it's there. So basically, the way to make economy is to build trade routes to import goods. If you wish to do export, which also gives you a lot of money, you need to increase your slave population in your settlements to generate more trade goods and, in general, have a higher population. To increase slaves, you build mills, you build either mines, farming settlements, or slave estates. You try and focus your population towards slaves if you want tax, if you want trade route stuff. It really doesn't depend too much on it other than towards the nobles. The reason I say trade routes and nobles is because a lot of the trade goods you want to import that's valuable improves the opinion of nobles and citizens, and thereby boosts other stuff. The game is very interlinked. Suffice to say, trade routes give you commerce, importing commerce. To export it, you need more population. So a country like Judea here, which starts bordering both the Antigonids and Egypt, will be able to trade with them and basically import as much goods as you can want and make a lot of money. I recommend, you want to learn the economy, go play Judea for 100 years and try to make as much money as possible. It's a pretty safe country to play. You'll have an overlord for most of the game. And unless your overlord abandons you, no one's going to attack you. So you can just sit here and practice building up your economy. So anyway, that's a guide on a civilized economy. Hopefully it helps people understand it. By all means, ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them. Check out my other guides. I'm going to be doing some other guides on a tribal economy, warfare, just all the tabs in general. And I'll see you guys all then. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.